mark through row 9 of my swatch so that way we can work on this border together. The instructions say you're supposed to evenly crochet 132 single crochet along this edge. If you want to make sure that your stitches are pretty evenly spaced out, here's a little tip and a way that you can do the best you can as far as single crocheting evenly. What I want to do is I'm going to take my tip of the shawl and I'm going to have it meet up with my side edge, okay? I will take a marker and I'm going to mark the halfway point where the fold is, okay? Once I've done that, now I want to mark the halfway point between these. So from this point to where my marker is, I'm going to mark my halfway point there. Okay, you see that? And then I'll do the same here. Another thing I could do is go like so. Find where this halfway point is on this one and just come down here and have it match up. Now what I've done is I've divided my shawl into sections. 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. So now all I have to do is take the total number of stitches I'm supposed to single crochet down along this edge, divide it by 4, and make sure I only put that number of single crochets in each section. And that is one way you can try and do your best to evenly single crochet along an edge, okay? So this is actually a method that I use quite often. It's also a way that I use to add buttonholes to pieces, but this is a really great way to make sure you have things evened up as best you can. You see that? So that's one way we can make sure that we're going to evenly space out these stitches along this row edge. Pretty great tip, right? Okay, so when we work along the edge of a project, especially this shawl, you have to make a decision. Are you going to actually work into the post of these stitches or are you going to work around them? Either way technically works. You just have to make a decision and stick with it, whichever way you decide. So for this border, for this round, it has us do a chain 1. And then it says working to the end of the rows, you'll single crochet 132 evenly. Well, of course, mine is a smaller swatch, so I'm just going to single crochet very few. Let's see how many I can get from this point to that point. And I'm going to go around the entire post of the stitch because I tend to think it looks cleaner. So there's 1, 2. Okay, so I'm coming up to my marker and that would make 8 single crochet for me and I'm to my marker. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start my stitch in my marker there and I have to decide, do I want that stitch there, which would be my stitch number 9, to count as the first stitch of my next section or as my 9th stitch of this section? And I want it to count as my first stitch of the next section, I believe. So what I'm going to do is take my marker and I will place my marker into the top V of the stitch I just completed. Can you see that? I'm putting it right there. The reason I'm doing that is as I go to the next section, if I find that I need to rip back, I don't want to have to go and recount all these stitches to make sure I'm not ripping back too far. So by placing this marker into the actual stitch, what happens is if I were to rip back, let's just take this off and rip back, that marker stops me from going any further. And I know that I have stopped where I have my 8 single crochet already completed. Does that make sense? So that marker gets to stay in place. So now as I go on and I work my next 8 stitches, so let's do that now. So that's my 8th stitch. I'm to my marker again, which means I don't have to rip back, so I'll just leave that in place. I will go ahead, do my 9th stitch again. Remember, you have to complete that stitch first. Take that next marker out, put it into the stitch. Notice I'm into the actual stitch behind the loop that's on my hook, okay? I'm going to place that in there so that way I have a point for this row. So that is my first one of the next set. My 8th stitch for me is going to be down here at this corner. So I want to make sure I place my stitch down there at the corner. Now that I've reached the corner of my shawl, I simply go up the other side of the shawl, making sure that I get the same number of stitches between each of my markers. So all I have to do is make sure I'm going all the way up back to this point. When I get to this point, that's when things change ever so slightly for the top part of the shawl. So let me get up to this point. When you get to the corner, and all of your stitches are done along the body of the shawl, we now are going to work across the top of the shawl. And we will do this working picot stitches. So we will go ahead and start off with a chain 1. Then we will picot into the next double crochet. And for a picot, you will single crochet, chain 2, and then single crochet into that same stitch. Then we will skip a double crochet and picot into the next double crochet. And we do this for a total of 6 times. Skip, picot into the next. Once you've done the 6 picots, you will single crochet in this chain 1 space. And now we will go on and do picots here, but this time we do it for 5 times. Once you complete the last picot, you will join with a slip stitch to the very first single crochet you did. So I went in to that single crochet, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then pull that through. And as I set this down, you can see that round 1 of the border is complete. Row 2 is really simple. We're only going to actually work down the long edge, and we will do it doing single crochets and chain 1s. We will then place a picot right down here at this tippity point of the shawl. So I can go ahead and remove my markers at this point. I had them all in there so that way I had ripping back points too, but I don't need to have them in there anymore, so I'm going to remove them. But aren't those handy? They're just a really great way to make sure that you evenly space things out. All right, you'll notice first off, this isn't a round, this is a row because we're only going to work from this point to this point, okay? So let's go ahead and continue on. We will single crochet into this very first stitch we did, and we start off with the chain 1. Single crochet in the first stitch that we joined to in the previous round, okay? Now, working all the way down to 1 stitch before this point, I will do a chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet in the next stitch. Chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet in the next stitch. I want to point out that it's very important as you're working down this row, you do not make those chain 1s very tight. If you do, the border of your shawl will actually pull in and it will begin to pucker. So it's important that you keep those chain 1s the same size as the barrel of your crochet hook. Don't make it any tighter. All right, so here we are. I will chain 1. I will skip this stitch before my corner, and in my corner I will do a picot. We know how to do that. It's just a single crochet, chain 2, and then a single crochet. Okay, and then I rotate ever so slightly so that way I can get back along this edge, and I repeat. So I will go ahead, work my chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet in the next stitch, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet in the next stitch. In the last stitch up here, I will work my single crochet, and I will finish off my work. So I will go ahead, cut my yarn, leaving a nice long tail so I can weave in my ends. Okay, let's take a look at my little mini shawl I have here. You can see how beautiful this works up, and I'm actually using Red Heart soft yarn, and the yarn called for in the pattern is Fashion Soft, so it's the same type yarn. This one's just a little bit bigger, but you can see that is really beautiful. Now the finishing touch on this shawl is adding some fringe, which is really simple. Just cut yourself some fringe, add it along this long edge, and make sure you weave in your tails. The thing I want to point out though is that if you do not want to add fringe, you absolutely don't have to. This shawl is a stunner without it. But there you go. Now you know how to make the crochet boho shawl. If you do make this shawl, be sure to share with me on social media, #MarleyBird, so that way I can smash your like button and let you know that I enjoy looking at your finished product. I'm Marley Bird, proud national spokesperson for Red Heart Yarns, and I hope you've enjoyed this video and you'll come back for more. Talk to you soon. Bye. Hey, thanks for joining me today on the channel. If you want more videos just like that one, check out some of these other videos that I've already handpicked for you. And don't forget to hit subscribe so that way you're up to date whenever I release a new video. And don't forget, smash that like button, as my kids say. Bye guys.